studying a BA in English Studies and an MA in Comparative Literature. David loves to explore the metaphysical in all forms of art, but especially literature. And he has been an academic visitor at the Faculty of Classics at Oxford University, where he continues to conduct his research on the natural places of Tolkien's literary work. So the floor is yours now, David.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind introduction.
Do you have a PowerPoint presentation? Okay.
Yes. Just a minute. So, how does it work? Well, that's good enough.
Sí, ahora le das a ver. Si te podría.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah. So thank you for your kind introduction, and thank you, Maya and Martin, Raúl, for the opportunity to share with you part of my work this morning. So the question that draws our attention is that of the existing relationship between myth and nature. Does mythopoetic literature bear any relevance to the ecological turmoil that this earth suffers? And if so, how can myths help us as human beings restore our often far from ideal relationship with our natural environments? So my statement with this paper is that myth, understood in its etymological sense of story or narratio, offers the reader the opportunity to widen her or his perception of the natural world. Myth, and in consequence, mythopoetic forms of art, are capable of conceiving a vision of the cosmos in which the physical and the metaphysical are combined together, come together. So, I would like to go and look into that Oxford group of writers and intellectuals commonly referred to as the Inklings. But before that, I would like to dwell a little bit on the Romantic tradition and how this tradition offers us a very good start to understand what then was the seeds of what the Inklings then came to perceive as regarding myth and regarding nature. So the Romantic concept, interlocked concept of nature, the divine, and creative poetry resounds profoundly with the question that we are addressing this morning. In his essay, the Romantic Construction of the World, Julian Eilman explains the Romantic engagement with the natural world. Eilman argues that for key Romantic intellectual figures such as Novalis, Friedrich Schlegel, Johann Gottlieb Fichte, and for Fichte, the world was impregnated with universal poetic reality. But what does this poetic reality mean? Well, in the words of Eilman, it's the conviction that the poetic spirit, essential to the human condition, is not limited to humans, but that it may be found in the whole cosmos of nature. The world itself is impregnated of a poetic vein which transcends the physical worlds. This poetic vein is the key to this part of the presentation of the work, of the paper. By these words, Eilman is equating poetic reality with a mythic vision that comprises both the physical and the metaphysical together. Eilman is inferring nature of a spiritual meaning. And this is not something that Eilman just invents. He is explaining the Romantic tradition that often referred to as nature, and nature with this physical or metaphysical or transcendental quality as enchantment, the absolute, the eternal, or the divine. As this sample of words shows, the Romantics were not at all indifferent to spiritual matters. Quite the contrary, they endeavored to achieve a vision of the transcendental through imagination. For instance, William Blake's poetry has often a prophetic tone inherited from the Bible. Furthermore, William Wordsworth's preface to the lyrical ballads presents the poet with as a mediator between God and the people. There exists, therefore, an analogy between the Romantic movement and Christian thought in history. In Christian philosophy, the earth, perceived as God's creation, is immanent with God's own design. For example, St. Thomas Aquinas, in his Summa Theologica, states, God is in all things. Since God is very being by his own essence, created being must be his proper effect. Therefore, as long as a thing has been, God must be present to it. Thus, the Romantic vision conceives a world full of meaning, and does this by stepping into the Christian tradition as well as it renovates it. Such meaning inferred nature of a transcendental quality, this meaning that the Romantics claimed nature had. And this quality, available to all humans, is nevertheless made more manifest to the poet. Eylman states in this respect that the Romantic poet attempts to transcend the prosaic world through his artistic work and endeavors to reveal another layer of reality that in daily life is only glimpsed by sensitive individuals. In older days, this aspect of reality, both hidden and essential, was identified with the divine. And in Christian societies was named God, whose presence was referred as well to as God. So, before we go to Owen Barfield, if nature is immanent with a transcendental divine quality, and the poet is the one capable of perceiving and transmitting it, then my next argument is that myth offers us the opportunity to contemplate and engage with nature in new and meaningful ways. And for this, I to the Inkling's turn. So, before we'll go and look now at Owen Barfield, but I would like to start with a quote from C.S. Lewis, who, commenting on the quality that the Lord of the Rings has or had, said, the value of myth is that it takes all the hidden things we know and restores to them the rich significance which had been hidden by the veil of familiarity, to continue later in a manner resonant of romantic ideals. If you are tired of the real landscape, look at it in a mirror by putting bread, gold, horse, apple, or the very rose into myth. We do not retreat from reality, but we rediscover it. It is Owen Barfield who will now we will look now at our Owen Barfield and how he develops in more detail this concept of myth, nature, and language. So his main work, Poetic Diction, published in 1928, is the basis, but I'll be referring to Verlyn Flieger's excellent study, Splinter Light, who develops or who explains this work by Barfield, which will be in turn key to understand Tolkien and his views on literature and myth and folklore or fairy stories. So, according to Flieger, Barfield's theory holds that myth, language, and humanity's perception of the world are interlocked and inseparable. Barfield asserts that myth was in its origins the expression of a worldview that united both the physical and the metaphysical. Therefore, words being the embodiment of mythic concepts and a mythic worldview give expression to the perception that humankind had of itself with the natural and supernatural worlds. Basically myth was this all-in-one thing that expressed humanity's perception of the natural and the supernatural. This relationship was nevertheless lost in the course of history. As a consequence of the fall, humankind lost communion with God and the earth, his creation. And this was reflected in language. Humankind, Flieger explains, in its beginnings had a sense of the cosmos as a whole and of itself as part of that whole, a sense that has long been since left behind. Language, as expressions of our consciousness, progressively suffered this severance between the human and its surrounding. And this has led to in which words have no longer meaning because they are no longer rooted in the ontological being of creation, but in mere abstraction. Ralph C. Woods, in his work The Gospel According to Tolkien, explains or shares his perspective. The truth is that modern languages have degenerated rather than improved. In the ancient world, men and women did not abstract ideas and concepts from their complex rootage in the interwoven, though unequal dimensions of reality: the natural, the human, the divine, and alas, the demonic. Yet in myth and mythopoetic stories, language may again recover these holistic qualities. So myth becomes now the antidote, the key or solution to our dilemma. And C.S. Lewis presents this in his essay, Myth Became Fact. Here he states, of this tragic dilemma, myth is the partial solution. In the enjoyment of a great myth, we come nearest to experiencing as a concrete what can otherwise be understood only as an abstraction. So if myth is the partial solution to our dilemma, words, the embodiment of mythic concepts and a mythic worldview, then become the instrument of reconciliation. I think this is beautiful. This perspective is supported by Fleer's study, and she states that both Tolkien and Barfield regarded the word as the instrument of creation, and both felt that the task of the poet was to bridge that separation, to use words to reconnect what had been severed. So words are the bridge to reconnect with both the divine and thus with creation, with this earth and nature, according to these intellectuals. So, especially Tolkien, which we will now see. Therefore, language itself becomes an instrument of reconciliation with the natural world and God. Tolkien expresses this, or implicitly expresses this perspective in his works Mythopoeia and then on fairy stories. But for time constraints, I will focus on only the fairy stories. So, aquí, fairy stories, a landmark of literature theory, present. Let me check the time. Okay. I'm fine, thank you. So, fairy stories is a landmark of fantasy literature, first delivered in St. Andrews as a lecture, and now we have it in an essay form. Here, Tolkien states that fantasy, the making or glimpsing of other worlds, was the heart of fairy. So, it's the other world, is that other place which we can visit through imagination, thanks to words. The substance of myths. Here, Tolkien states also that because of this, so according to Tolkien, the distinctive characteristic of fairy tale is its setting, not that much the characters. He goes to state that, and this relationship between imaginary space and real Earth allows the fantastic genre for ecological relevance. As Tolkien states, simple or more fundamental things are made all the more luminous by their setting. For a story maker who allows himself to be free with nature can be her lover, not her slave. One of the key features of fantastic literature, resonant with myth, is that it aids in the recovery of an enchantment vision of the natural world. As Tolkien metaphorically states, creative fantasy, because it is mainly trying to do something else, make something new, may open your heart and let all the locked things fly away like caged birds. This comes later. So the word enchantment, notice that means literally to be in a song or chant. As Peter Curry defends, enchantment is a cause of wonder, and this wonder, being both mysterious and ineffable, is key in revealing the reality of creation. We need to wonder to understand the earth. The wonder produced by fairy stories, argues Tolkien, offers the reader a recovery of the value and beauty of nature. And here he states this, I think this powerful quote: "We should look at green again and be startled anew, but not blinded by blue and yellow and red. We should meet the centaur and the dragon, and then perhaps suddenly behold like the ancient shepherds, sheep and dogs and horses and wolves. This is recovery fairy stories help us make. I have briefly surveyed the romantic perception of the world as overflowing with meaning. That's what the romantics were for. Such a perspective doesn't come out of the blue, but it has an important analogy with Christian thought in history. Moving from the Romantic period, I have some key highlights from Barfield's poetic diction, using Verlyn Flicker's study, as well as some excerpts from C.S. Lewis's essays. But finally, Tolkien's mythopoetic vision is the key, as it engages with the natural world. His presentation, his vision of the natural world, mediated through fairy stories, a form that could be argued to be from a form of myth or mythopoetic literature. So, in conclusion, I will venture to boldly state that myth is not dead, nor the source of its stream. On the contrary, myth and mythopoetic art invite us to apprehend this world with clearer eyes, and in doing so engage it with our hands, minds, and hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for this great presentation, and thanks also to Anne and Natalia. And well, I would like to say that I'm personally very impressed by how confident and how calm you've been, both throughout this session and the previous one. We can all agree, you look as if you had been doing this for a really long time. So congratulations, and now I just open the floor for the Q&A. And those at home, also feel free to raise your hand or to type your questions. Okay, Raul again.
Hi, again, this is me again. Okay, so first of all, I was thinking one thing, and it's very close to your last comment. I was listening to the three speakers, and I can't see you as our students, but almost as unequals. I mean, you are like nowadays proper academics, so very well done. Very well constructed the presentations, and we are very proud again. And yes, I'm going to let time for the rest of the audience for your questions. But one question just is food for thought for David mainly, right? Because you have started speaking about metaphysical poetry and so on, and maybe I don't know if you agree or not. I miss a reference to probably metaphysical poetry or John Donne. Because, okay, romanticism was there, but there was something before. And moreover, when you have presented a comment about Barfield and Tolkien, about inspiration, it is just a way of replicating what epic poetry presented, about how inspiration was created, or moreover, Milton's Paradise Lost, when he asked for inspiration to God, for that muse who is going to drive, his hands. So there was something before, and maybe yes, to keep it in mind can be handy for the future. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, Marcena?
I have it's rather a comment, but also a question to Anna. H.G. Wells, which is the end of the 19th century, and then the interwar period, but in between the 19th century and the interwar period, you have the Great War. And I was wondering whether you were looking at the impact of the Great War upon monstrosity. I was thinking about the question of monstrosity in terms of physicality, that is the men or soldiers with the broken faces who were seen as monsters and were hidden from the society and were called gargoyles. And also the theme of monstrosity as the return to the beast theme in war fiction and film, like Liam O'Flaherty wrote the novel Return to the Beast. You have Eric Remarque, who also writes about soldiers and beasts. Have you been doing also this kind of study as a monstrosity, not in myth, not as a fiction, but in real life?
Yes. Thank you so much for that question. It's very interesting because I haven't, so far, my research on Wells has been like limited to his early fiction because apparently he has two different phases on his production. Those are the scientific romances of the late 19th century, and I think they end by 1901. And the rest of the fiction he wrote is more political, and maybe there are some of those topics you've talked about on those novels that are they are. I know I haven't read them yet, but I know they are very didactic and very moralizing. So I wouldn't put it past him to tackle those topics. But I think it's a very interesting theme to explore. Because we've been talking about this sometimes before, about how this novel is also related to disability studies in some ways, because there's a lot of emphasis on how the beast folk aren't fully humans because they lack something, or because they don't exactly resemble the rest of society or the human model. So I assume that during those periods, people who came back from the war as cripples or with some kind of impediments were also must have felt that kind of marginalization. So it's a very interesting connection, but so far I haven't researched on that. But thank you for the idea.
Always pushing everybody into the Great War.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Martin wants to ask something.
Yes, thank you very much to all of you who've been presenting this morning. Not only this panel, but the previous one as well. Endorsing the words that Raúl has just addressed us with. I'm really proud of you all, and it's just great to listen to such good academic performers here today. Now, I think that it's a good opportunity perhaps to expand now, just very briefly, but still to let us know a little bit more about your current research. And this is more or less, to some extent at least, the basis for other types of research into other areas of knowledge within the same field, but still, I mean, could you all perhaps tell us very shortly where this original research will be leading you in the future? I'm sure the audience would appreciate that as well. Thank you.
So briefly, to explain our work, so I'm researching Tolkien and Tolkien's Middle-earth, and particularly looking at the natural parts of that Middle-earth is made of, and I'm using the Silmarillion as the background to understand not just what's the meaning of those places as the company or the fellowship goes through all the Middle-earth, right, from the Shire to Mount Doom, but to understand what's the metaphysical, what other layers of meaning we find in Middle-earth. And my argument is that Middle-earth is a character in itself, and very much has an important role to play. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so for me, this was a bit of a guinea pig, I guess. It is a bit of what I'm doing in my thesis, but on a smaller scale. What I want to do, as Amaya has already told you, is analyze how a British archetype is brought to Japan and how this changes the archetype. And I do it through the lens of post-colonialism. So for me, this is like the entry point to a very big mess I'm getting myself into, of demonstrating that we need to stop thinking about nationalities and cultures as close things only, like we need to understand that culture will always be a continuum, and that yes, for instance, the Shinigami is Japanese, but it's something we wouldn't have if, I don't know, if people in Japan hadn't read the Bible and had read the Apocalypse and thought of the pale horse, I think it's called, death. So yeah, for me this is the entry point to propose that we need to abolish all these barriers, that in a moment that everyone is very much focused on their own nationalism and what makes a culture, like for instance, what makes Spanish culture Spanish. We need to start seeing that every culture is hybrid. We live in a hybrid world, and we are not doing us any favor in pretending that it is a different way. That's it.
Well, mine is also deals about the hybrid, but in a different way. I do plan on expanding the topic I've talked about today in my PhD thesis, but I want to incorporate more contemporary works of science fiction, and that's the reason why I want to include all different kinds of hybrids. So, as we were mentioning before, I wanted to incorporate some posthumanism to my thesis, and talk also about the human/machine hybrid, or AIs, and those kinds of non-hegemonical identities, and how they are basically the overall topic would be to focus on how power asymmetries are, or how power structures are disturbed through these creatures, and how most of the times that is related through language, and how they are addressed, how they address themselves, and the power of naming things or calling something a thing itself. So, but I still haven't decided yet. I haven't even done I haven't done the paperwork to start the PhD itself. So, I'm still thinking about it. Thank you.
Well, I think many of us can relate to or resonate with Natalia's words of like entering this big mess. While doing the PhD, I'm still trying to find my way out, but here there's plenty of proof that there is a way out. So, yeah. Any final questions or thoughts? Okay.
Thank you. So I have just a quick question for Natalia. Is the archetype of the Shinigami, has it been manipulated in any way, in any political way? Has it been used by younger generations in any subversive way to make a political statement, or is it more like a popular icon? I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Oh, yeah. You spoke perfectly. I would say, well, first, for context, after World War II, the country has went downhill from the spiritual point of view. They had a very blocked vision of religion. So what happened afterwards is that there has been a very big proliferation of new views on spirituality. Personally, I think that the Shinigami is so popular because many times it mocks the idea of death. Many times they are like just comic characters. And they are comedic characters, but they are also inherently serious because they deal with a tough topic. So I haven't found any particular trend, but I don't think individual authors try to make points through these figures. For instance, if you are familiar with a an anime that is called Death Note. Like, it's super famous right now. Like the philosophical baggage that the Shinigami have in that worldview is incredible. It is used to think about the ways the legal system treats people, for instance, in prison. Because I don't know if you know that in Japan there's still the death penalty, and there are very interesting studies about how Death Note is related to death penalty. If you're interested, I can share them.
Sure.
So, yeah, I do think individual authors do choose to use those characters with subversive intentions, but I haven't found out any particular trend. Then again, I haven't looked at every single one for that, so I don't know, maybe there is. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, I think